Good evening, friends. Yesterday we had seen the rubrics pathetic, where the patient was feeling very much emotionally pathetic in a state. But when they feel that they are himself, they are pity, and they show pity to themselves. So there is another rubrics related to it, and it is pities herself. The rubric pities herself arises from the English expression to pity oneself, meaning to feel sorrow, sympathy, or compassion for one's own perceived sufferings. He feels that he is suffering from something, and for that he is very feel bad. Pity is a old French word, pitié, and it starts from the pities, meaning compassion, mercy, or self-tender sorrow. And self-pity means it is excessive exaggeration of sense, emotional sorrow directed towards one's own conditions. Usually we show the pity to outside others, but when you see direct your pity to yourself, then this rubrics will be useful. Thus, pity herself refers to not to a merely sadness, but to the habitual emotional state where the patient remains absorbed in their own suffering. In homeopathic language, this rubric reflects the deep inner postures where the individual uses pity as an emotional refuge and defense mechanism or manipulative tool. Thus, it is not the same as grief or depression. It is self-directed, sentimentally mentality in which the ego becomes a center of the emotional narratives. In repertorial literature, especially in the Kent, Bonnigsons, and Boric, this rubrics denote the passive, yielding, and dependent, emotionally fragile and mental state. Self-pity is a unique emotional phenomena. It is not anger, it is not depression, not despair, yet it can include elements of all the three. So you can feel that it is anger, it is depression and despair directed towards themselves. So it is the combination of the three. It is a soft emotions, inward turn, clinging and reflective, and patients who pity themselves have highlight their sufferings. They used to highlight their suffering. They recall past injury, dwells on imagined or exaggerated hardship, and feels neglected when supported, and seeks sympathy as a coping mechanism. Continually compare themselves with the pities of with the sufferings of the. So they are in a comparative. They feel that I am more pitiable, I am more depressed, I am more sad, I have more problem than the others. Homeopathic rubrics from this point of individualization internalize their emotional injury rather than confronting it. And this state may develop due to long-term neglect or trauma, overprotected upbringings, chronic illness leading to dependency, emotional hypersensitivity, and strong attachment where it is needed, and suppressed anger or resentment. It is a narcissist vulnerability. In clinical states, this rubric is crucial when the patient presents with sentimental, self-centered emotional tone and narratives narrating their life story as if they are the sole sufferer in the world. The remedy reflects this emotional color, not just an external symptoms. And this rubrics that you find, it entered into our Kent repertory under the mind pities herself in the very early stage. Kent describes such patient as whining, complaining, and desire sympathy, too aware of their sufferings. Then Bonnigsons used this more generalized approach and often relating this state to sadness, resignation, sentimentality, weeping with a desire for consolation, And Boger included this emotional tone under brooding, sentimental tool, mood, and lamenting and complaining. So this repertory expresses shared understanding. Self-pity is a passive emotional distortion resulting from exaggerated internal sensitiveness. Now that you can frequently see these medicines under Sepia, Pulsatilla, Natrum, Ignatia, and Phosphorus, Arsenic, etc. Lachesis also. And in Indian psychological and cultural context, in Indian society, emotional expressions carries a very unique cultural meaning. Self-pity often develops to role-based expectations. Women expected to sacrifice and elders expected to endure, and social comparison pressure, and family-centric emotional dynamic, and lack of emotional vocabulary which forces patients to express suffering indirectly. Indian patients often express self-pity over detailed narrations of difficulties, portraying themselves as martyrs, and they have sacrificed their life, and emotional dependency on family members and spiritual metaphor. भगवान ने मुझे ही सब कुछ दुख दे दिया है ना, भगवान ने मुझे ही, God has given all the sufferings only to me. So Indian homeopathy historically recognized that self-pity is not a weakness but a subtle defensive emotions masking deeper wound such as long-standing grief, disappointment, humiliation, and suppressed anger and powerless family structure. These are well expressed by Dr. Pathak, Dr. Ken Mathur, Dr. Sarkar, Dr. Bogers, and Ken Banerjee, Ramanlal Patel, and they have carefully observed during the case taking. And then psychological features of this rubric. Self-pity arises due to the multiple psychological mechanisms like victim identity formations. Patients begin to identify themselves as a victim of life, fate, or people around them. Then emotional fragility, their emotional threshold is low. Minor criticism or disappointment triggers deep sorrow. And then there is a need of, it may also arise due to the need for the dependency. And they need consolation, appreciating their sufferings, and remain attentive and fulfill their emotional needs. The narcissist injury, when self-pity sometimes masks hurt pride, unacknowledged anger, and frustration due to the unmet expectations. Then avoidance of the responsibility. Some people avoid responsibility by describing themselves as they are the sufferer, and decision changing and accountability. And then also sometimes it is a manipulative type to gain the sympathy, maintain relationship, control other and other conflicts. So passive aggressive behavior are there. Sometimes protest, see how much I suffer. No one cares. Everyone is against me. These are the verbs, these are the speech that you can listen from these type of the patients. Now the clinical features and the patient expressions, verbal expressions will be like this. Why does everything happen to me? क्यों मुझे ही सब कुछ होता है? No one understand my pain. कोई भी मेरा दर्द को नहीं समझता है. I have suffered the most. मैं सबसे ज़्यादा कष्ट सहा हूँ. I am always lucky. मैं भाग्यहीन हूँ. मेरे भाग मेरे साथ धोखा दे दिया है. मुझे people use me but I don't care. है ना? लोग हमारा यूज करते हैं लेकिन मैं उसके ध्यान नहीं देता. माई लाइफ इज ओनली ए पेन. मेरा जीवन दर्दों से भरा हुआ है. एंड देन फिजिकल एक्सप्रेशन, स्लो ड्रैगिंग वॉइस, टीयर अपीयर्स इजिली, ऑफन accompanied by sighing, drooping facial expression, slouched postures, and desire to hold or touch something for comfort. Then behavioral clue is that frequent recounting of the past trauma. They will keep on counting things that has been done in past, then emotional dependency on the physicians, need for reassurance and emotional warmth, and dramatic expressions of helplessness, and being easily offended by rarely expressing anger deeply. And clinically, correlations, it is also accompanied in the neurological symptoms like headache worsened by the emotions, fainting spells, psychosomatic complaints, and cardiorespiratory basis issue are also there. Palpitation when thinking of sadness, breathlessness during emotional conversation. Then the gastrointestinal symptoms may also accompany, like indigestion when upset, bowel habits changes due to the emotional distress. And gynecological correlations is that menstrual irregularities, hormonal mood swings, and emotional weeping during the pregnancy. And in the chronic disease relationship is also there. It may develop in the long-standing diabetes, kidney disease, autoimmune disorder, and then depressions and post-traumatic states. Now you should compare these rubrics with some of the related rubrics, which is very closely. Lamenting is always complaining type. Be wailing. That it is also then weeping, sympathy for desire, complaining, sentimental, despair, brooding, element from grief, delusion, neglected he is, and then delusion, injured is. Mind sadness dwells on the past, misfortune or unforgettable conditions. Then a mind consoled ameliorates. It is differentiating with the Pulsatilla, consolation ameliorates, Natrum consolation aggravates, but still has self-pity in chronic grief, and Ignatia, acute grief, paradoxical reactions, and Sepia, indifferences, aversion to the sympathy. Mind, fear, poverty. Self-pity often stems from the subconscious fear of the insufficiency. Then mind resignations, depressions, depressive acceptance of the suffering, and mind injustice cannot support. Here also you can see this type. So miasmatic relationship, now you can see all the three mild. Soric mild, features are helpless, dependency, insecurity, and emotional vulnerability. And soric self-pity is tender, soft, and childlike. Then syphilitic mild is despair, hopelessness, self-destructive sorrow, and feeling of undeserved punishment. So here the self-pity becomes dark, resentful, and self-condemning. And the psychotic mild means suppressed anger, self-protective grief, secretive sufferings, and emotional stagnations. So it is you can see that self-pity hides inner wounds and project a controlled sadness. Now comparison with the with some of the remedies. Soft Pulsatilla, they are soft, weeping, and wants consolation. Childlike dependency. Self-pity is gentle and expressive. Easily feels neglected. Natrum, silent, dignified, internalized self-pity. Consolation aggravates. And deep-seated grief and disappointment. Sepia, you can see that self-pity mixed with the irritability, feels burden, aversion to loved ones, emotional dryness, but inner exhaustion is there. And Ignatia, acute grief, sighing, spasmodic emotional, and self-pitying fluctuates with the contradictions. So there are so many medicines, and how you can identify during the case taking. You have to listen properly. Listening and observations is very much important for every rubric. And here the emotional tones you have to listen. Is the patient seeking sympathy? Does he want sympathy? Is the narrative centered or personal sufferings? and are they dramatizing their story? Some people try to dramatize this thing. So this also you have to understand. The narrative pattern, how they are explaining. Self-pity, emphasize details of the sufferings, repeat stories of injustice, portray themselves as a martyr, and then highlight how others failed them and use emotional word excessively. Body language is slow movement, tearfulness, sad eyes, sighing, slouching, and resting head on the hand. So like they will rest their hand like this. And this is crucial clue. You have to see that whether consolation she feels better or not, or get irritated, or it triggers the tears. And past emotional history, you have to look for any grief was there, disappointment was there, broken relationship was there, neglect was there, family conflict, long-term emotional suppressions. Then personality baseline, you have to see that whether the patient is dependent, self-critical, hypersensitive, avoidant, and emotionally dramatic. So the skill is that allow the patient to speak freely, not interrupted during their emotional narratives, observe rather than judge, and notice contradictions and catch self-depreciation expressions. Now let us see some of the scenario. Chronic illness, depression. A diabetic patient repeatedly say, I am the one who suffers most in the house. No one has to hear what I bear. Then another marital conflict. Woman expresses, I sacrifice everything and no one ever appreciates me. Then another type you can see, emotional exhaustion in the old age. An elderly patient says, my children have forgotten me, my life is only sorrow. And post-traumatic state, the patient constantly revisits the trauma, emphasize their own sufferings. And the adolescents, in the teenagers, no one understands me, I am the most unlucky person in this world. So it will become the chronic emotional positions. So remedy differentiation, you have to combine reaction to consolation and general sensitivity, grief reactions, irritability, and dependency, physical modality. Then deeper understanding about the psycho-spiritual layer is very important. They indicate stuck emotional energy, a victim consciousness, unresolved grief, and need for emotional nourishment, and weakened willpower, inability to accept the change. So homeopathic remedy, what our homeopathic remedy can do, it can restore the self-responsibility, emotional resilience, and clarity and balance, inner strength, ability to process the grief, and capacity to move forward. So self-pity is not merely a symptom, it is a gateway for the soul suffering, guiding the physician to the simillimum. So lastly, I can tell you, it represents the deep, complex, multi-layered emotional state consisting of victimhood, dependency, suppressed resentment, emotional fragility, hypersensitivity, need for sympathy, and inability to process suffering in a balanced way. It is not superficial sadness, it is a chronic emotional orientation, shaping the patient's outlook and behavior and negative. So understanding this rubrics for what you have to do, you have to carefully listen the patient, you have to make a sharp observations, cultural sensitivity should be there, and psychological insights you have to, and also the repertorial master is also important. So knowledge of constitutional type. So friends, I have just tried to explain you that if you can identify this type of the sentimental patient, silent and dignified, irritable and burdened. So you can, if you can, you can find the exact simillimum, and it will help the inner persons to get. Yeah, there are the full video recordings are available, and it is put on the my website, like the YouTube channel, that is Mridul Sahani channel. You can go there also. I used to post both in Hindi and English. If you want to listen Hindi, you can do it. So this is important. Friends, when you are learning the repertorial rubrics, you don't only go by the meaning, you go by the psychological, clinical, and the historical aspect. So, and then how you can ask the interact with the patient in the clinic. These are things are very important. So, whenever you have any questions, you can ask me on my WhatsApp number 9431020622, and I hope that you get a better insight. And I am trying to give you one rubrics every day, and I hope that this will be useful for you all. So with these words, last word, I thank you all for listening me carefully, and I hope that I will be able to continue for long periods. So thank you very much.